Let you guys loaded? That had to have been what, back in 71 or
That's
something?
before I was born.
That was before you were born?
I'm just kidding. Yeah, it was
72? I remember we were down there and had Thanksgiving dinner, and my wife even remembers where we went and had Thanksgiving.
74, 75.
The King's Table.
We went to the King's Table and had Thanksgiving, and then, I guess it was 75 that we went down to?
I think, yeah, we went down 75.
Yeah,
And I
75.
think, did you go on 72?
72 is when you packed us.
When-
Yeah, Lori was
So-
baby.
We got our family all together and we took off and we were gone for close to a month. And we went down, all the way down to Guatemala.
Wow.
And when we crossed the Guatemala line, our 73 Chevy started running pretty bad. So we got to Guatemala and Elroy said, oh, there's a Chevrolet garage down here. So I took it down to the Chevrolet garage hoping, not knowing Guatemalans, I hope they can fix it. You know what? We got between 2 and 3 miles to the gallon better gas mileage after they got done with it than we did all the time we had before. Amen. But you know, we had such a great time down there. And it's so good to have you with us, Doug. This guy's been all over the country.
Oh, man.
He's even been in the government. So pray for him.
What you pray for me, exactly. Oh, what a delight to be here. When I was talking with Galen Rodello this week, and we mentioned maybe we could swing by, and they said, hey, would you speak? Would you minister? They said. I thought, man, what an honor, humbled, and you've ministered to me this morning in conversations we've had, and in the Bible study we had prior to service, and just a delight to be here. It's been, the last time I was up here, I spoke in, I think about 2007 was the last time I was here, and I was serving in the state legislature, and I couldn't stick around because I had to have a dinner with the Prime Minister of the Republic of Ireland. You remember that? And I just had this stiff suit on and all this nonsense, and had to jump in the car, and so when given the opportunity to come back up and spend time with you guys, it's just been delightful. A lot has happened since then, and I'm going to be sharing with you part of that. In fact, I scratched my head when I was praying about what I should share. I said, well, Father, is that really what you want me to talk about? Because it's, I don't know, it just didn't seem. But after conversing with Marina, the word that you spoke in the before Sunday school, you didn't know, there's confirmation. And as we talked in Sunday school, it's just, okay, God, you know what you're doing. You're putting stuff together, and I'm just going to be obedient and speak and let God do what He wants to do. But it was so fun driving up here with my mother. She's from this area, and I was born in Prescott, and there's so many stories, and it was so fun driving up, Yarnell Hill and all that, and through Congress before that, and Kirkland and stuff, and reminiscing of the stories that have happened in life. And in my mind, I remember the story that when Stephen was growing up one time, he's at the table with Galen and Rodella, and he said, hey, Dad, are bugs good to eat? And Galen said, now, son, let's talk about that later, not at the dinner table. And so after dinner, Galen went to Stephen and said, now, and what is it you want to talk about? Well, never mind, Dad, there was a bug in your soup, but it's gone now. That story crossed my mind. It's not a true story, but it crossed my mind. And we went through.
I remember when Stan gave you a hot shot.
Yeah, I remember when Stan gave me a hot shot. I probably deserve it. I don't think I did, but I probably did. But there's a lot of stories that we could talk about like that. And I think Stan was sentenced next week once he gave me the hot shot. So there's another story. There's a rancher that appeared before St. Peter in the pearly gates, and St. Peter was looking at his list, and he goes, well, have you done anything of particular merit? And the rancher said, well, actually I did. I was going from Congress up to Prescott, up Yarnell Hill, and I saw a bunch of bikers messing with this girl, and I pulled over, and I found the biggest one, the biggest, meanest, ugliest one, and I went up to him, and I yanked his nose ring out of his nose, and I slapped him. No, I love bikers. This is a great story. He is one. But anyway, I yanked that earring out of his nose ring out of his nose, and I slapped him upside the face. I said, hey, you leave her alone, or you'll have me to deal with. And St. Peter said, when did that happen? He said, just a couple minutes ago. Get it? I can rewind first gear if you want. In other words, they took care of him, right? Sent him to heaven, like that. Okay, anyway. Okay, I got a couple more jokes later on. I'm worried now whether you're going to get them. Okay, I'll have to, no, just kidding. But I do have a story that I want to share with you. It's a true story, and I was privileged, as Galen mentioned, my parents served as missionaries, and I was privileged to grow up in Latin America. And in Paraguay, there's a family that had dedicated their lives to reaching an unreached people group called Macay Indians that lived on an island in the Paraguay River. And man, they sacrificed, they'd given up everything to go and minister to these people. And they dedicated and lived for years, no electricity, no running water, incredible diseases, hoping beyond hope that something about their lifestyle would draw these people to the Father. You can imagine the hardship, you can imagine the sacrifice, you can imagine what they went through. This is way back, before there was telephones down in that area, before there was electricity, before the mail came on a consistent basis, before there was television, anything. And so for years and years and years, they sacrificed and committed to this people group, and there was no evidence of any movement. They just go, God, help us. One day they got a messenger at the door saying there's going to be a town council of the elders, and the elders want Marvin to come. They have a question to ask of him. And Marvin was stirred. He was certain this was when the moment, this is going to be the breakthrough. This is when they were going to ask him about his faith in Jesus Christ. And he and his wife prayed and said, Father, give us some words. Tell us what to say. Tell us what to do. And Marvin went to the appointed time to the hut where the elders were meeting and sat on the ground, on the floor around the fire, and the elders did all things. And finally the chief spoke up and said, we have a question that we've debated, and we've watched you. And you've been here for years, and we just admire and respect and honor you for years. And we have this question that's weighing on us. And boy, with that kind of introduction, Marvin knew for certain that this was the moment when they were going to be able to share Jesus Christ, because this is just a waiting moment. And as he sat there, his nose tickled a little bit, and he pulled out his hanky, blew his nose, and put his hanky back in his pocket. And the elder said, well, wait, that's exactly what I want to ask you. Why do you save your snot? True question. True story. It really happened. Put yourself in their shoes, and how would you have felt? I mean, we laugh about it now because it's humorous, because we ask for the why do we save our, right? But put yourself in their shoes, years upon years of sacrifice, wanting to point people to Jesus Christ, thinking this was the moment, this is a breakthrough, only to be asked, why do you save your snot? Marvin went back to his, and I know this story because I grew up with their boys. I played soccer with their son and taught their daughter how to read. And Marvin went back and told his wife, and they were just deflated. They go, is it worth it? After everything we've done, all they want to know is that. After the sacrifice, after the witness we've been, is that really worth it? You know, I love the stories about remarkable people who don't give up. But there are times in our life when we get to a place where we ask, is it worth it? There are times when we say, is it worth it? All we want to really do is navigate our boat through the ocean of life. And it seems like circumstances like storm waves blow in and threaten to tip us over. And it's in those moments we go, is it worth it? That storm may come when we're a child, might come when we're teenagers, might come later in life, it might come when we're senior citizens. And the storm might be in the form of inexcusable abuse. It might be crashed economics of your life. It might be when your integrity is questioned. It might be through broken relationships. It might be through bad health. Maybe it's through loss of purpose or unwise choices. But life is not meant to be a negative, it's meant to be a positive. But the events of life keep slapping against our lifeboat until that initial optimism that we're born with that glee and that innocence of, I want to do it, is slowly beat out of us, causing us to ask, is it worth it? Not long ago, I experienced the force of those unforgiving waves. When the results of choices, both mine and of others, the effects of misplaced priorities and ignored truths began slamming against my boat, threatening to swamp it. I call it the perfect storm. I remember when it hit. In fact, it was hitting last time I came and spoke here. I was midway through my term as a state legislator, and the economy crashed. And that was the first wave. At the time, I was doing fantastic financially, incredibly great income, beautiful home, possessions, vacations, you name it. But the economy crashed, and with it went my resources. Soon, instead of asking where we're going to vacate, we're wondering when are we going to vacate our house, because it was getting repossessed. So we lost our cars, and we declared bankruptcy. I said, wow, that was a storm. Enough already. Surely that's it. No. The second wave hit with a questioning of my integrity. I lived in this small town. As you can tell, this is my testimony, so that's why I'm not telling you something I haven't lived. Lived in a small town, and I was driving by our church, and I felt heard a voice saying, hey, the pastor's in trouble. I pulled over and called him up, and I said, Ted, what's up? What's going on? He said, I've been accused of embezzlement. I said, Ted, I'm beside you. I didn't know if he was guilty or innocent, but I said, I'm beside you. I'm going to walk you through this. I'm going to be your brother. Little did I know or think that because of people feeling that he was for sure guilty, that then they questioned my integrity when I chose to support him. That time, as I said, I had positions of leadership in the state and the community. I was a president of the Chamber of Commerce, as a president of the Arts Council of North Valley. I was a local high school soccer coach. Soon those positions melted away as the Chamber of Commerce questioned my integrity and took a vote of no confidence. President of the Arts Council voted out of position because they were sure that I was in on the deal. Parents started yelling from the grandstands incredible profanity that I couldn't believe that they would say in front of their kids. And I remember going home at night feeling like, man, this whole town is angry at me. I remember saying, wow, God, that's been quite the storm. I'm sure glad that's behind me. I'm sure glad we weathered that storm only to discover the storm wasn't over. The third wave hit in the form of broken relationships. Soon the cracks of my marriage were canyons, and we suffered a terrible divorce. That's not God's will. I remember lying in my studio apartment on my salvaged mattress from the dumpster, listening as my neighbor upstairs stumbled to the bathroom 2, 3, 4 times a night in his drunken stupor, hearing the neighbor next door scream and cry as she hallucinated from her drug habit, hoping that this ugly storm was behind me. No. Wave number 4 hit. My physical health was threatened, and during this time I had a myriad of physical issues, the worst of which is diverticulitis. I fought it. I don't know if you know it. It can be lethal, but I thought I can win this. I got down to 120 pounds, and finally I succumbed to the surgeon's knife, and I remember laying on the hospital bed, feebly hoping that my storm was now over. Unfortunately, it wasn't. Wave number 5 hit when my purpose and connection with others was lost. Back at the church, during this time, they were investigating, and I was part of the team that was doing a forensic accounting of all the money to make sure where it had gone, only to find that the pastor was incredibly innocent. Not only had he not embezzled funds from the church, but he actually been giving money to the church and putting bills on his credit card so he could keep going, risking his own financial possession, and he in turn ended up losing his house because of his commitment to see the church strong. But we couldn't come out of it. The church was in a tailspin, and soon we had to close the doors. And during that time, it had been my responsibility to open the doors and greet people as they come in and welcome them and facilitate ministry. And I didn't realize how valuable that was to me, that connection, that sense of purpose. And with the closing of the doors, I lost that connection and I lost that purpose. And I remember going, wow, God, this has been a storm. I'm glad it's all behind me. It wasn't yet. Wave number 6 hit in the form of mental and emotional health breakdown. I found myself fighting a severe depression. Man, I couldn't breathe. My chest was heavy. I didn't want to get out of bed. I would cry. I was listless. I couldn't do anything. I didn't want to do anything. And it was during this time, if you recall, Robin Williams committed suicide. And I remember not just hearing about that, but experiencing it, feeling it. When you're at the bottom, you feel it when somebody gives up. And during the same time, 2 of my close friends also chose to give up and committed suicide. I found myself on a curb in downtown Phoenix sobbing. Everything was a fog. I knew I was cracking. I wanted to step off the curb in the traffic. I knew I needed help. I reached for my phone. I said, Siri, find me a counselor. I was done. Friends, I tell you about that not so you feel sorry for me. I tell you for 3 reasons. 1, you might be sitting here experiencing your perfect storm. It's very likely it's 10 times worse than what I experienced. You may not be experiencing your perfect storm now, but one day you may go through a storm, and you need to know what I'm about to tell you. Number 3, someone you know is going through their perfect storm, and you need to know what words to give them. And it's so important to let you know there is good news. I made it. You can too. As I struggled through my storm, I was reminded of and I learned some powerful truths: the power of hope, the power of forgiveness, the power of our minds, the power of words, the power of friendship, the power of hope, the power of affirmation, the power of generosity, the power of perspective. And with these truths, I slowly began bailing the water out of my boat, and I eventually made it through my storm. Now, I'm still not perfect, and that was probably the first truth that I learned, because I used to think that I was. I really did. And my parents were sure I was perfect too. I mean, they dug, you can do it. They were full confidence in my abilities, full confidence in my talents, and I took that to the next level and said, yeah, not only that, I can do it by myself. The power of imperfection was the first truth that I learned. And, you know, we want everybody to think that we're perfect, don't we? That we haven't made mistakes or that nothing bad has happened to us. Sometimes we take that on. We want people to think that we really aren't in need, that we're not needy, we don't need help. Even now, as I stand before you, I really want you guys to believe that I'm perfect. Go ahead. Voice to the person next to you. He's not perfect. Go ahead. Just say it. Say to each other, he's definitely not perfect. Go ahead. I'm not moving on till you say it. Okay, now say to the person next to you, now say, and that's okay. I had to admit that I was imperfect, that bad things had happened, and that I had made mistakes. And as I did, the shame, the embarrassment that weighed me down was released. How did I admit that I was perfect? Well, as I mentioned, as I stood on the street corner of Phoenix and got out my phone and said, help, I need a counselor. I admitted that I needed someone other than myself to walk me through what I was going through. And the counselor was fantastic. And then I reached out to my pastor. And I reached out to selected peers in my family. And it was difficult because I was certain of everybody's judgment. Why? Because we want everybody to think we're perfect. I was certain they were going to condemn me. I was certain they were going to say, well, Doug, we'd love to help you, but you're a complete failure. You're beyond rehab. There's no hope for you. I'd heard the sermon in my head before they had a chance to preach it. A funny thing happened. They were there for me. Instead of judgment, warm embrace, acceptance, assistance, healing, encouragement. So the question I have for you is, how are you doing? How are you doing? You know, we come to church, we get all gussied up, and we clean behind our ears, and we even brush our teeth because we want everybody to think that we've got it all together. And some of you are going like this, looks like I forgot something. How are you handling your perfect storm? What truths do you need to be reminded of? This morning, because of brevity of time, can we just start with the power of imperfection? Because I really believe that's the starting point for all of us. Are you tired of pretending that everything's okay? That you aren't perfect? Are you tired of hiding behind the shame of your mistakes and the wounds of things that have been done to you? It can be so difficult to admit. I get it. I was there and I am there. But none of us are perfect, and yet we continually try to pretend that we are. And by pretending that we are perfect, it works against us because we don't get God's help or the body's support when we act like we have it all together and we can do it by ourselves. So what do we need to do to experience the power of imperfection? It's very simple but very hard. We need to admit our imperfection. Admit that we aren't perfect. Admit that we've made mistakes. Admit that we are hurting from what has happened to us and that we need help. We're so fearful of the reaction that we believe that we'll get from God and from others. But can I tell you two secrets? They're really not secrets, but God already knows you're not perfect.
Amen.
Yeah, Romans 3:10 says, none are righteous. None. Not one. So guess what? It's easy to admit something to somebody that already knows something. And God already knows you're not perfect. Second secret is, everybody else already knows you're not perfect too. Right? Isn't that right? Romans 8:26 says, I'm jumping ahead. This is what I need to do. Here's what I'm going to do. Turn to the person next to you and just admit it right now. I'm not perfect. Go ahead. All right. Now turn back to those plain people and say, I know. And that's okay. It's so crucial that we admit both to God and to others. God knows, everyone else knows. We're the only ones we're kidding. Right? But until we admit that, we don't get to experience God's power. But can I tell you the 6 things that happen in our lives when we finally admit that we don't have it together? The first is we allow God to show up powerfully in our lives. When we are weak, He is made strong. It doesn't say when we are strong, He is strong. In fact, when we think we're strong, He is actually made weak because He can't work in and through us like He wants to. Romans 8:26 says the Spirit helps us in our weakness. The reverse of that is also true. When we pretend to be strong, He's made weak. So that's the first thing. When we admit that we're not perfect, He can come in and be strong. Number 2, when we admit that, we recognize we're not alone. Hebrews 12:1 speaks to this when it says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race that is marked out for us. Surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. Who who's in this cloud? Who are these witnesses? These are all the people that have gone on before. The giants of the faith we talk about in the Bible. The scary thing is we call them giants of the faith, but you know what? They were imperfect, just like you and I. And we often get this picture that they're up there going, now Doug, you really, no, Doug, oh, Doug, you're such a loser. You shouldn't have done that. And they're up there going, no, come on, you can do this. Pick it up. Let's go, buddy. I believe you. We did it. I did it. You can do it. This great cloud of witnesses is cheering you on. A bunch of imperfect people have weathered their own perfect storm. They're not judging, they're cheering. The same is true with the others in this room. As you admitted to them and as they already know that you're not perfect, they're not judging. They're cheering. They want you to succeed. They want to help you. Everybody in this room wants to support everybody else in this room. Yeah, we get some times where we irritate each other, we bug each other. That's a human condition. The fourth thing, we find out there is hope and there is help. In Romans 8:26 says, in the same way that God helps us in our weaknesses, He helps in two ways. His presence in us can now work in us, and His support from the body. And we're going through life acting like we have all together. The body's going, I can't help you because you don't need any help, at least you don't think you do. Until you come to realization and admit it, you don't get to receive this help. The fifth thing is we learn, I love this one, there's a bright tomorrow. Oh, when you're in the middle of a storm, you're looking for that sun and you're looking for a break in the waves. You're going, is this ever going to end? And the Bible says, yes, it's going to end. Jeremiah 29:11 says, I know the plans I have for you to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you what? A hope and a future. Ooh, hope? Isn't that what we're longing for? Hope and a future? Hope? I mean, we're gasping for air in our storm, going, I need some hope. And God said, I'll give it to you. Just admit that you need me. John 10:10 says, I have come that you might have life and that you might have it in abundance. In the middle of our storm, we're not feeling that abundance, are we? And as you come across people in your life and they're feeling the storm, recognize they're not feeling God's abundance right now, but give them the hope that God does have abundance in mind for them. He wants to see them. He wants to give them hope. And He has a beautiful life ahead of them. The sixth truth that becomes ours when we finally admit that we need His help and the help of the body is the storm qualifies us to serve. The storm qualifies us to serve. You see, when we haven't gone through storms, more than likely we're relying on theory or head knowledge or what someone else has said. But when we've gone through a storm, all of a sudden we start walking with a limp. And that's the only person I trust, is a person that walks with a limp. Because there I see a person that's imperfect, and I go, I can identify with that. Because I'm imperfect. My pastor said as I was going through this, he says, Doug, you're going to have such a beautiful story to tell. I said, beep that. Sorry, I did. Let's be real. I just wanted it over. And he's talking about, so I'm sorry. And you know what? He was right. Hebrews 10:32-36. Listen closely as I read it slowly. But remember the early days after you saw the light. You stood your ground while you were suffering from such an enormous amount of pressure. Could we say perfect storm? Sometimes you were exposed to insults and abuse in public. Other times you became partners of those who were treated that way. You came alongside them as they were being insulted. You even showed sympathy toward people in prison and accepted the confiscation of your possessions with joy. I'm not sure how joyful I was, but since you knew that you had better and lasting possessions. So, don't throw away your confidence. It brings a great reward. You need to endure your perfect storm so that you can receive the promises after you do God's will. Now, because of what I've experienced, I can help others. And that's the power of imperfection. Remember that missionary family I started telling you about at the beginning here? They were devastated. Why we save our snot? Seriously? 10 years of our life, and that's what you come up with? Are you, God, what is going on here? They wanted to quit. They didn't, though. When it came time for them to retire, that people group, more than 70% of them had accepted Jesus Christ as their personal Savior.
Praise God.
Friend, I don't know where you're at, but I want to tell you, don't quit. You don't know what's around the next corner. You don't know what's about to break through. You might ask, will life ever be perfect? You might ask, will I ever be perfect? And I've got to be honest with you, no. You won't be. Trust me. And life won't be perfect. But life doesn't have to be perfect to be wonderful. And you don't have to be perfect to be wonderful. God sees you through his eyes, through Jesus Christ, and he says, what a wonderful child of God. In the middle of your imperfections, in the middle of your mistakes, in the middle of the wounds of what others done to you, God looks at you and says, you're God. I can work through you. I can heal you. I can strengthen you. I can equip you. Would you bow your heads with me? Father, thank you for giving me this opportunity to once again declare that you are wonderful. And to declare once again that you always see us through our storm, if we'll let you. The sooner we admit our need of you, the sooner you're able to help us as we navigate the storm of life. Father, each of us here in this room are at a different place and we come in contact with different people, but life would tell me that most in this room are experiencing some kind of storm. And I pray that today, Father, your love, your comfort, your patience, your grace will be so very real to each one in this room that we find the confidence to say, Father, I'm not perfect and I need you. Even as your children, sometimes we think that we can't admit our mistakes or mistakes done to us, and you're saying, no. It's even easier for you because you've already accepted the blood of Jesus Christ. And so today, those of us who are believers will not accept the lie of Satan. There's now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. We rest in that. We find confidence in that. We find comfort in that. We find strength in that. We're empowered by that, and because of that, we will not quit. We will not wait for life to be perfect. We will not wait till we are perfect, because our perfection comes from you. We thank you for this reminder today. Amen. That's all I've got.
You know, how many of us have been where he's talking? Amen. And you know, some of us may be struggling right now today. Maybe there is something here today. So what I would like to ask is, why don't we all stand together? Well, we reach out and take each other's hand, okay? Can we do that across the field? And I'm gonna ask Doug to pray. Because you know, the things that sometimes we're struggling over, we've got problems, we've got family problems, we've got things that are bigger than we are. Not bigger than God, but bigger than we are. And as we this morning reach out to each one, what we're saying is, I need you as a brother, or I need you as a sister. Are you with me? And we're going to ask Doug to pray with us, okay? And then after that, we'll close our service. But if there's any that would want prayer, or you want to talk to Doug, or share, we're here, okay? Amen?
Father, we come before you now, and there's a person here who has made some terrible mistakes. Mistakes that we'd look down our nose at them in our humanness. I pray right now that that person would understand your complete forgiveness and acceptance. There's a person here that has served faithfully and is tempted to say, it's not fair. It's not fair. How come? Father, reach and comfort. And give peace. And give strength. Father, there's the parent that whose kids aren't where they should be. Father, the Bible says, just as rain and snow falls to the earth and brings forth fruit, so my word falls to the earth and brings forth fruit. And we are confident, the parent here whose heart is breaking because their children aren't where they should be. You're at work, even when we don't see it. May we find that comfort in that storm of knowing that you're at work and you will bring forth fruit, and it's not ours to harvest. It's for you to harvest, and in due time, that seed will sprout. Father, there's a family here that, for all intents and purposes, is financially successful, but they're gone. We're empty. I pray that they would admit to you. And I pray that you could show yourself to them right now. Most of all, I pray that all of us here would learn two things. And leave this room with the recognition that, number one, you love us. You do not condemn us. You want to embrace us. You want to help us. And that's what this body is all about. You want us to recognize that we're here for each other. That's what the body of Christ is about, that we can support and encourage and instruct and be patient, and we can bind up each other's wounds as we go through the storm of life. I pray that today, that recognition, twofold, we become so aware of that. I ask that in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Praise